Chosen one, be still. Something holy has been following you since the moment you opened your eyes today. A stirring, a weight, a strange pressure in your chest that you tried to ignore. But heaven didn't ignore it. Heaven reacted to it. And what you did this morning shook realms you cannot yet see. You felt it, didn't you? That subtle shift in the atmosphere. That quiet pull in your spirit. That unexplained moment where your heart lifted for no reason at all. Listen to me. That was not emotion. That was recognition. Beloved soul, before your mind fully woke, your spirit did something extraordinary. A decision you made in silence. A prayer you whispered while half asleep. A thought that rose from a place deeper than memory. That is what moved heaven. You didn't even realize how powerful it was. But God did. And He is overjoyed. There is a reason you were led here in this exact moment. A reason your spirit stopped when it saw this message. This is not coincidence. This is appointment. Divine timing, wrapped in ordinary hours. Because what you did this morning, your small act of surrender, your quiet obedience, the shift in your mindset, the way you realigned your heart, even for a second, sent a vibration through the courts of heaven. Angels paused. Light shifted. Something written about your destiny began to unfold at a speed you were not prepared for. And the Lord said, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth." Isaiah 4:3-9. Chosen one, God is not simply pleased. He is overjoyed. Your breakthrough season awakened before you even left your bed. But this is only the beginning. There is a secret behind why your action shook heaven, and before this message ends, you will understand the full weight of what was released over your life today. Before we go deeper, if this word already resonates in your spirit, pause for a moment and breathe. Then, when you're ready, stay with me. Because the revelation that follows will not just explain what happened this morning, it will prepare you for what comes next. And if you feel the pull in your spirit right now, that inner nudge that says, "This is for me," go ahead and subscribe, not as routine but as alignment, because messages like this are heaven's way of keeping you in divine rhythm, and today is the first step of a much bigger awakening. Because the moment heaven responded to what you did this morning, something inside you began to tremble, not out of fear, but out of recognition. And that trembling is connected to a struggle you've carried far longer than anyone around you knows. You've lived so much of your life in silence, chosen one. People see your strength, but they don't see the nights when you sit on the edge of your bed staring at nothing, feeling a heaviness you can't explain. They don't see the mornings when you wake up already tired as if a battle happened while you were asleep. They don't hear the whispers of doubt that try to slip into your spirit before the sun even rises. But God heard them. Heaven saw you. And what you did this morning, whatever small act of faith, whatever shift of your heart, didn't come from a place of ease. It came from a place of deep, unspoken pain. You've been carrying wounds you've never fully named. The kind that live under your ribs. The kind you pretend you're over, even though some nights they still sting like fresh cuts. There were people who should have protected you, but instead they became the very reason you built emotional walls. There were seasons when you begged God to explain why the spiritual warfare against your life felt heavier than what others seemed to face. There were days when you looked at your reflection and wondered why the destiny delays kept stacking, why financial blockage followed you even when you worked harder than anyone around you, why breakthrough timing always seemed just slightly out of reach. You've asked God in secret, "What am I doing wrong? Why does it feel like something keeps pulling me backward every time I try to rise?" You never said those words out loud. You didn't want to sound weak. You didn't want anyone to know how close you came to breaking. But heaven heard the soundless cracks. There were moments more than you admit when you sat in your car after work, gripping the steering wheel, unable to drive, because the frustration felt too heavy to move through. You told everyone you were fine, but your spirit was exhausted from fighting battles the world never saw. Destiny alignment seemed like a distant concept, something promised to others but delayed for you. And yet you kept going. That persistence, that quiet resilience, that's what shook heaven this morning, because God knows how hard it has been for you just to keep waking up with faith. He knows the weight of the disappointments you've buried so deep that even you don't realize how much they've shaped the way you move. He knows about the betrayal, the one you still don't talk about, the one that made you stop trusting your own discernment. He knows about the moment your heart broke so quietly that no one in the room noticed, but heaven recorded every second of it. And he knows about the fear you've been hiding, the fear that maybe you've missed your moment, the fear that maybe you're too late, the fear that maybe God moved for everyone else except you. That fear is what your action this morning confronted without you even realizing it. The smallest act of obedience can trigger a divine reversal. And when heaven saw you shift even slightly, it began undoing things that have been lodged in your spirit for years. But before heaven released the acceleration, it revealed something first. Your struggle was never random. Your warfare was never accidental. Your delays were never signs of failure. They were symptoms of a much deeper spiritual reality, a reality that has been surrounding your life for far longer than you've known. Something has been watching you, resisting you, studying your patterns, and waiting for the moment you would step out of alignment, because your destiny has always threatened the darkness. And every time you tried to rise, every time you felt momentum toward breakthrough, something unseen pushed back, creating cycles you couldn't fully explain. Cycles of almost, cycles of not yet, cycles where blessings came close enough to touch, but never close enough to hold. But chosen one, something different happened this morning. Something shifted. Something snapped. Something broke open in the invisible realm. And what heaven saw, what heaven celebrated, what made God overjoyed, was the fact that you finally disrupted a cycle that has been trying to hold your life in spiritual suspension. Because what you did this morning wasn't small at all. It was a declaration, a spiritual signature, an act that signaled to the enemy, this one is waking up. And whenever a chosen one awakens, every opposing force begins to tremble, because an awakened spirit is unstoppable, especially yours. But before you understand the magnitude of that awakening, before you realize why the angels froze, why heaven erupted, why God himself smiled, you must first confront the truth you've tried to outrun. The real reason your struggle has been so intense, the real reason your blessings seem delayed, the real reason heaven reacted so violently to your simple act this morning, is because something ancient attached itself to your timeline long ago, something that has been waiting for you to notice it, something that only breaks when a chosen one finally realizes they were never fighting alone and never fighting what they thought they were fighting, but something far more ancient than you ever realized, something that wrapped itself around your timeline long before you had the wisdom or language to identify it. And chosen one, that hidden force didn't just attack your spirit, it attacked your place in the world. Because long before you learned to speak, before you learned to defend yourself, before you even understood the concept of destiny alignment or divine intervention, you were marked as different. And the people closest to you reacted to that difference in ways that carved wounds you're still trying to make sense of today. You didn't choose to be the outsider. You didn't choose to be the misfit. You didn't choose to be the one who didn't quite fit the family mold, but you felt it early. The strange stares, the whispered comparisons, the subtle comments that made you shrink your own brilliance just to avoid being the target again. You became the emotional container for everyone else's discomfort. You were the one they blamed when tensions rose. The one they misunderstood when you spoke truth too clearly. The one they labeled dramatic, rebellious, or too intense, simply because your discernment was sharper than their deception. You learned early that your light irritated people who preferred the dark. You learned that your clarity unsettled people living in confusion. You learned that your integrity threatened those who benefited from lies. And even though you grew older, that dynamic didn't disappear. It evolved. The same pattern followed you into friendships, into workplaces, into relationships. People projected their insecurities onto you. They mistook your silence for weakness. They misread your distance as arrogance. They took your empathy and treated it like an obligation. And worst of all, you internalized it. You began to shrink to survive. You dimmed so others wouldn't feel small. You carried generational burdens that were never yours to hold. This is why what you did this morning shook heaven, because even with all the misunderstanding, all the spiritual warfare, all the emotional manipulation, you still chose faith. You still chose obedience. You still chose to rise. But before that rise unfolds, chosen one, pause. Tell me, does this resonate somewhere inside your chest? Does it feel like I'm describing rooms you've walked through in silence? If so, speak it into the comments with the phrase, "I refuse to carry what was never mine." Let that declaration sever one more thread of generational bondage, because now the struggle deepens. And it didn't stop at how they treated your spirit. Their misunderstanding began echoing into your physical world, your atmosphere, your body, your nights. The attack shifted from emotional to supernatural, from relational sabotage to midnight warfare. It began following you when you tried to rest. There are nights you don't talk about. Nights where you bolt awake between 2 and 4 a.m. Heart racing, mind fogged, an invisible pressure sitting on your chest. Nights where your room feels colder than it should, where the air feels thick, where shadows feel too loud, where your spirit senses movement even when your eyes see nothing. You've had dreams that weren't dreams, faces that didn't belong to your memory, voices calling your name from a place that felt too close, visions that left you shaking long after sunrise. You've woken up trembling, clutching your blankets, unable to explain why tears were already streaming before you were fully conscious. You've felt a presence watching you. You've felt the atmosphere shift. You've felt the silent, strategic attempts to derail your breakthrough timing by exhausting your spirit before the day even begins. And still, you got up this morning. You acted in faith. You made one small move toward destiny alignment, and heaven exploded in response. Because the enemy has always known something you are only beginning to understand. When you wake up spiritually, when you finally see the truth of who you are, when you take even one step toward divine reversal, his influence over your life shatters. And that is why your nights were targeted. That is why sleep became a battleground. That is why your spirit woke, bruised but unbroken, tired but still choosing obedience. But chosen one, midnight warfare was only one layer. There is another level, a deeper truth behind why these attacks intensified at the very moments your breakthrough drew near. And when you understand this next revelation, when you see what has been moving beneath the surface of your life, you will finally understand why heaven responded so fiercely to what you did this morning, why God is overjoyed, and why the Spiritual realm is trembling right now as you continue reading, because the next thing you must confront is the real reason your warfare increased, the real root of the delays, the unseen force that has been trying to write over your destiny long before you even realized you were in a fight. And it begins with the moment when... It began with the moment when lack stopped being just about money and, quietly, turned into a language of shame that wrapped itself around your identity. Chosen one, you have felt it in your bones. This hasn't just been a bad financial season. It has felt like a pattern, a stranglehold, a spiritual net thrown over your life. You work, you show up, you sacrifice, and still, somehow it feels like you make 10 and lose 11. You get a little ahead and then something breaks. An unexpected bill appears, a medical issue, a sudden emergency that eats the very portion you were saving to finally breathe. You've watched notifications hit your phone with a sinking feeling in your stomach. You've opened your banking app with your jaw clenched, bracing yourself for disappointment before the numbers even load. Your chest tightens, your shoulders rise, your breathing changes. This is more than stress. This is spiritual warfare dressed as financial bad luck. There have been weeks where you held your card over a machine, silently praying it wouldn't decline, not because you were irresponsible, but because financial blockage has shadowed you in ways that don't even make sense on paper. You've replayed receipts. You've cut back on things you already cut back on. You've blamed yourself, wondering if you simply don't have the right wealth mindset, if you're cursed to stay behind while others move forward. And yet, underneath the math, there's something you feel but rarely say out loud. Why does it seem like something invisible keeps draining what I earn? Why does increase never stay? You've felt like your money disappears into a black hole. It comes, and then it evaporates. There is no steady overflow, only survival. And the most painful part, you've watched people with less integrity, less compassion, less obedience move into abundance and apparent financial stability, while you juggle bills privately, pretending everything is fine. You've walked into church, into work, into family gatherings, with a smile that hides the fact that you had to choose between paying one thing and ignoring another. You've felt the sting of feeling intelligent, gifted, anointed, and yet still somehow behind. That's not incompetence. That's not laziness. That's what it feels like when a generational curse of lack tries to sit on a life that was chosen for generational wealth. And here's the part heaven reacted to this morning. Even with that history, even with that pattern, you still made a decision, maybe to sow, maybe to tithe, maybe to forgive a debt, maybe to plan for your future instead of giving up. And it sent a shockwave into the structure of that stranglehold. Heaven saw you act as if financial freedom was possible for you. And the moment you did, hell realized its grip could not remain the same. But the enemy didn't only attack the money itself. He attacked your relationship with expectation. He tried to condition your nervous system to expect loss at the exact moment gain approached. And that's where the next layer comes in. Because this financial stranglehold has never just existed in numbers on a screen, it has shown up in timing, in doors that almost opened, in opportunities that almost landed, in miracles that came close enough to taste, but never close enough to hold. Right here, chosen one, as you're hearing this, if you feel that sharp ache of recognition in your chest, I want you to mark your agreement with heaven. Write in the comments, I refuse to lose what God sends. Let that be your declaration against every invisible pattern of almost, because what you've been facing hasn't just been lack, it's been something far more subtle. There were jobs you should have had, interviews that went perfectly until the last call that never came, Promotions that seemed promised supervisors, praising you co-workers, acknowledging you right up until the moment the opportunity mysteriously went to someone else. There were collaborations that looked aligned. People who said, "We're going to do this with you, we're going to help you, we're going to back you." They hyped you up. They pulled you into plans. They asked for your ideas, your strategy, your creativity, your anointing, and then, right before the breakthrough timing hit, the energy shifted. They became distant. Their tone cooled. The invitation was postponed, complicated, or no longer necessary. You've watched emails go unanswered at the final stage. You've watched contracts sit in draft. You've watched doors that were wide open suddenly slam shut without a clear explanation. You've sat on your bed in the dark whispering, "God, why does it always fall apart at the end? Why does my destiny alignment feel like it stops 1 inch from the finish line?" Your body remembers this pattern. That's why you feel tension even when good news arrives. You receive blessing with one hand and hold your breath with the other, waiting for something to go wrong. You don't just fear failure. You fear almost success. You've had relationships that mirrored it too. People who showed up like they were sent, talked about building with you, dreamed out loud with you, only to disappear. The moment commitment was required. They took your blueprints. They took your energy. They took your time. And then, once they had what they needed, they stepped back, leaving you with unfinished bridges and unexplained silence. Each near miss carved a deeper groove in your soul. A groove that whispered, "Maybe I'm not meant to cross. Maybe I'm not the one. Maybe God chose the wrong person." That isn't humility. That's trauma. And it has been weaponized against your destiny. Because if the enemy can't erase God's calling, he'll try to make you too exhausted, too discouraged, too doubtful to walk in it. But hear me, what you did this morning, that simple act that seemed small to you, was a direct contradiction to that pattern. You moved differently. You thought differently. You chose to believe that divine intervention could rewrite what life has taught you to expect. And heaven responded like lightning. Because the near-miss pattern is not a personality trait. It is not your luck. It is evidence that your life sits on a fault line between realms, a sign that there is more on your life than you've been allowed to touch so far. That's why each delay has hurt so much. You're not sad over small things. Your spirit is grieving appointments you were built for, but never allowed to fully enter. And now that heaven has moved, now that the decree is shifting in your favor, now that spiritual structures are cracking around you, the next revelation you must face is this. Those near misses were never random. They were timed, coordinated, strategic. And if you could see what was really happening in the unseen, every time you got close, every time paperwork stalled, every time support evaporated, every time somebody changed their mind at the last second, you would understand why God is overjoyed that you finally disrupted the rhythm this morning, why angels leaned in, why hell panicked, and why the very pattern that has stalked your life for years is now standing at the edge of collapse. Not your collapse, its collapse. The collapse of the pattern, the collapse of the blockage, the collapse of every invisible chain that has tried to script your story without your consent. Chosen one, this is where all of it converges. The loneliness wasn't random. The heartbreak wasn't random. The near misses weren't random. The financial attacks weren't random. The 3 a.m. warfare wasn't random. The suffocating heaviness that hit you in waves wasn't random. Every delay, every disappointment, every betrayal, every spiritual hit you couldn't explain, it was all pointing to one truth. You were never being destroyed. You were being trained. Heaven has an elite system for those marked for dangerous levels of glory. Those with mantles heavy enough to shift their family line. Those destined to break generational patterns, overturn spiritual warfare, and carry wealth with the emotional maturity to keep it. Those chosen for influence that cannot be corrupted. God does not train these souls casually. He trains them like warriors, like kings, like carriers of legacy. That's why your pain has been so specific, so intentional, so relentless. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. You learned loneliness so that when fame, attention, or elevation come, you won't become addicted to the wrong voices. You learned betrayal so you could discern wolves in sheep's clothing before they get close to your destiny. You learned financial strain so you could handle overflow without fear, waste, or pride. You learned midnight warfare so the enemy could never again intimidate you with the dark. You learned delayed timing so you could hold success without letting success hold you. Every wound sharpened you. Every setback sculpted you. Every unanswered question stretched your spiritual intelligence. Every closed door built your spiritual muscles. Heaven has been forming someone dangerous, resilient, anointed, unbreakable, and hell knows it. That's why the pressure intensified. That's why the attacks grew unfair, almost psychological. That's why you felt like life was squeezing you into corners no one else seemed to enter, because the enemy recognized what you hadn't yet. Your next season requires emotional armor, spiritual awareness, and divine authority that can only be formed in fire. And chosen one, you survived the fire. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't fold. You didn't curse God. You didn't become what hurt you. You kept a soft heart in a hard world. You kept faith when logic told you to quit. You kept praying when your prayers felt unanswered. You kept waking up when your spirit felt drained. And heaven said, "Now the training is complete. Your suffering was not wasted. Your delays were not failures. Your tears were not ignored. Your heartbreak was not misinterpreted. You are standing at the end of the hardest curriculum God gives his strongest warriors. And now, the season shifts. But before the shift unfolds, before the strategies are released, before the blueprint is unveiled, heaven is asking you to mark this moment with faith. Chosen one, if you believe that God is preparing to restore double everything you lost. If you believe the warfare was the proof of your calling. If you believe elevation is closer than it has ever been. Tap subscribe and like, not as engagement, but as agreement. As covenant, as prophetic alignment, because what comes next requires spiritual attention, and heaven does not want you distracted when the breakthrough hits. Now listen carefully, because we are crossing into a new phase of this message. Everything you have endured, every valley, every attack, every moment of silence was leading to this threshold. You have endured enough. You have bled enough. You have waited enough, and now God says, it is time to strike back. He is placing in my spirit the most precise and divinely revealed strategies, the framework, the blueprint, the spiritual weapons, the pathway, the set of instructions that will help you overturn this battle, starting tonight. But before I release even the first revelation, you must understand that before you can overturn what has been fighting you, you must learn the protocols that heaven has been waiting to place in your hands. And so now, chosen one, the first set of divine strategies begins to rise quietly, powerfully, unmistakably, because God is not asking you to endure anymore. He is training you to govern. The first protocol, the law of immediate alignment. Chosen one, the enemy has not been attacking your strength, he has been attacking your alignment. Every delay, every financial blockage, every near miss, every sudden discouragement came during moments when your spirit slipped out of divine positioning. So hear me. Your first instruction is to master immediate alignment the moment you wake. Do this without negotiation. Before you touch your phone, before you rehearse yesterday's fears, before anxiety starts whispering your name, place your hand on your chest and say out loud with full spiritual authority, "My soul, align with God now." Feel your breathing shift. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel the chaos inside you begin to settle. Why does this matter? Because spiritual warfare always begins with internal disorientation. If the enemy can scatter your thoughts in the first 5 minutes of the day, he can scatter your decisions for the next 12 hours. When you claim alignment at sunrise, you shut the door to confusion and open the door to destiny acceleration. You draw your spiritual blueprint back into order and call your scattered power home. This is how cycle breakers begin the day. This is how wealth carriers hold their ground. Do this every morning until peace rises before you do. The second protocol, the gatekeeping principle. Now listen. Heaven says your life has been too accessible, too open, too unguarded, too porous, too easy for low frequency interference to slip in and rewrite your atmosphere. The second strategy is the gatekeeping principle. Your spiritual boundaries must become fortified like a city under royal protection. Here is how: every time someone speaks into your life, every time a suggestion enters your mind, every time a thought tries to anchor itself in your spirit, you must ask one question. Did this come from God, or did it come from fear? If the answer is fear, insecurity, jealousy, or desperation, you reject it instantly, without apology, without guilt, without overthinking. Gatekeeping is not cruelty, it is spiritual authority. You must stop explaining your decisions to people who do not carry your calling. Stop absorbing the emotions of those who have not done the internal work you've done. Stop letting people with no vision shape your destiny alignment. The gatekeeping principle demands that you choose your counsel with surgical precision. It demands that you protect the atmosphere that heaven has been fighting to cleanse. And chosen one, this is critical. Many of your near misses were not because you lacked ability. They were because you allowed the wrong voices to touch your momentum. When you guard your gate, destiny flows without interruption. The third protocol, the law of reversal command. You must learn this now, because this is the weapon the enemy hoped you would never discover. Every spiritual attack against your finances, your confidence, your sleep, your relationships, your timing, every one of them carried a pattern. That pattern can be broken, but it cannot be broken passively. You must command reversal. This is not begging. This is not pleading. This is standing in your God. Given jurisdiction and issuing a decree. When you feel heaviness, sit on your chest for no reason, command reversal. When you sense anxiety spike out of nowhere, command reversal. When paperwork stalls, when money evaporates, when support collapses, at the last second, command reversal. Speak it the moment resistance appears. By divine authority, I reverse this attack now. Say it firmly. Say it without trembling. Say it until your spirit believes it. Why does this work? Because hell has relied on your silence, on your hesitation, on your uncertainty. But when a chosen one issues a decree, heaven backs it instantly. Chains that took years to forge begin to break in seconds. Generational curses start losing their legal claim. Financial breakthrough stops hiding. The atmosphere bends under your words because your words carry weight you have never fully understood. Use this law often and use it without fear, because reversal is not a request, it is your birthright. And now that this law has been spoken into your life, the next layer of heaven's arsenal begins to unfold, not gentler, but deeper, sharper, more transformational. Because once you learn to reverse an attack, the next step is learning how to prevent the attack from forming in the first place. Prevention is higher than reaction. Master this, and the enemy loses the element of surprise forever. The fourth protocol, the circle of silence. Chosen one, heaven needs you to understand something with absolute clarity. Most of the warfare you experienced did not come from demons. It came from people you trusted, with information they were never spiritually qualified to carry. Every time you shared a dream too early, every time you spoke your plans out loud to someone with a jealous heart, every time you handed your vision to a fake Joseph, you opened a door. The enemy eagerly walked through. This is why God has been quieting your spirit, pushing you into seasons where you feel the urge to withdraw, to say less, to speak in coded phrases, to keep your movements hidden. Do not resist that instinct that is divine alignment, protecting your destiny acceleration. From this day on, only share what heaven has already completed, not what heaven is still forming. Plans in infancy are fragile. Words create spiritual currents, and when they are released into the wrong atmosphere, the wind shifts. So here is the instruction when God gives you an idea, a vision, an opportunity, a financial breakthrough. Seed, protect it like a newborn. Guard it like a treasure vault. Speak it only to God until it is unbreakable. And if this resonates, if you know you've lost blessings because you shared too much too soon, write this in the comments as your power phrase, "My silence is my shield." Let that declaration become your firewall against premature exposure. The fifth protocol, the environment shift. Now listen closely, because this is the one strategy hell hoped you'd dismiss as trivial. Your atmosphere is not neutral. Your home, your bedroom, your workspace, these places are spiritual ecosystems. Mess attracts stagnation. Clutter attracts confusion. Dirt attracts delay. Darkness attracts spiritual warfare. And every time you tried to rise into financial breakthrough or clarity of purpose, something in your physical space pulled your frequency downward. You've felt it: heavy air when you wake up, irritation without a clear source, difficulty concentrating, tension in your shoulders. That's not personality, that's atmosphere programming your nervous system. Here is the divine instruction: you must cleanse your environment. Clean it with intention. Declutter with prophecy. Throw away objects tied to old seasons, old relationships, old versions of yourself that no longer exist. When you release physical debris, spiritual debris loosens with it. Light a candle. Open your windows. Play. Worship softly. Make your home a place where heaven feels welcome to dwell. This is not decor, it is warfare. God cannot pour fresh oil into a room still holding the scent of old battles. Clear your environment, and you will be shocked how swiftly divine alignment begins to flow again. The sixth protocol, the altar of praise. Chosen one, now we step into the strategy that shifts the entire battlefield. Praise is not music. Praise is not emotion. Praise is not an optional expression. Praise is a weapon, one of the highest weapons in all spiritual warfare. Praise confuses the enemy, because demonic systems are built on fear, and praise annihilates fear at its root. Every time you praise, when everything is going wrong, when money is low, when betrayal stings, when timing feels delayed, when anxiety rises, you are declaring to hell, "You failed. I still trust him." Praise creates a frequency the enemy cannot breathe in. It suffocates attacks. It dismantles generational curses. It triggers wealth transfer because it aligns your heart with gratitude, and gratitude magnetizes blessing. Here is the prophetic instruction: when heaviness hits, when confusion fogs your mind, when tears fall without explanation, do not collapse, lift your hands. Whisper one line: "God, you are still worthy." That single sentence can break warfare that 100 prayers could not touch. Praise turns your room into an altar. An altar becomes a doorway. A doorway becomes a portal for divine intervention. And once you master praise as warfare, heaven will begin revealing strategies, even deeper strategies, that only unlock after your praise shifts the atmosphere around you. Because once the enemy realizes he can no longer invade your home, your emotions, or your spiritual gates, he will attempt one final tactic: disrupting your inner compass. That's why the next protocols must go straight to the core of your spiritual navigation system. The 7th protocol, the Vision Audit Chosen One. You must understand this. Your eyes are gates. Your ears are gates. Your attention is a gate. And the enemy has been infiltrating your gates, subtly, not through obvious sin, but through noise, distraction, overstimulation, and content that dulls your spiritual sensitivity. This is why some days you feel spiritually foggy. This is why clarity evaporates the moment you need direction. This is why your discernment flickers, even though you are anointed to see through deception. Heaven is telling you plainly, audit what you allow into your spirit. Do this with seriousness. Stop exposing your soul to low frequency, entertainment, toxic music, chaotic videos, worldly commentary that pulls you out of divine alignment. Replace it with scripture in the background, instrumental worship sermons that feed destiny, acceleration, or simply silence. Silence is not empty. Silence is a portal for revelation. When you reduce the noise, heaven becomes louder. Your intuition sharpens. Your prophetic senses return online. Your destiny blueprint becomes visible again. And chosen one, if you feel this truth stirring inside your chest, comment this right now to anchor it in the spirit. My eyes belong to God. Because the moment you guard your vision, heaven begins downloading the instructions you've been praying for. The 8th protocol, the toxic detox. Once your gates are cleared, the next layer becomes unavoidable. You must confront the people who drain your spiritual energy. God is not asking you to judge them. He is asking you to discern them. There is a difference. Some people are not evil. They are simply not assigned to your calling. Some are not malicious. They are misaligned. Some are not your enemies. They are distractions soaking up bandwidth you cannot afford to lose. Toxicity is not always loud. It often comes dressed as obligation, guilt, emotional dependency, or manipulative kindness. Notice how your body reacts around certain individuals, the tightness in your stomach, the subtle anxiety, the need to shrink, the feeling that you have to manage their emotions just to keep peace. Your nervous system is telling you what your spirit already knows. Here is the divine instruction: begin stepping back. Not with drama, not with announcements, just distance. Let your yes be sacred. Let your no be final. Let your peace outrank their expectations. When you remove toxic access, the atmosphere around your soul becomes breathable again. The generational curse of people pleasing breaks. The exhaustion lifts. and your destiny begins to move without interference. That is why heaven is emphasizing this now. Your next elevation requires emotional space. Without detoxing your circle, you cannot step into wealth transfer, divine strategy, or spiritual authority. The ninth protocol, the protocol of first fruits. Now we move into one of the most underestimated, yet spiritually explosive instructions. The way you start your day determines the authority you carry in it. Heaven has been watching you wake up into warfare, checking your phone, scrolling through chaos, consuming noise before consuming God. This is not judgment. This is revelation. When you give the world the first minutes of your morning, you surrender your spiritual authority before the battle begins. But when you give God the first fruits of your day, your breath, your mind, your focus, you activate divine alignment that shields you from attacks you never even see forming. So, here is the spoken instruction. When you wake, sit up slowly. Place your feet on the ground. Say nothing yet. Just breathe. And offer the first minute, just 1 minute, to God. Whisper gratitude. Whisper surrender. Whisper alignment. This opens the heavens over your household. This rewires your nervous system. This welcomes prophetic instruction before your day begins. If you do this consistently, you will notice something supernatural. Breakthroughs that once required intense spiritual warfare will begin flowing without effort. Because the moment you give God first, everything else falls into divine order. And chosen one, as we step into the next realm of strategies heaven is preparing to reveal, because heaven knows exactly what many chosen ones do. Not your victory won't come from learning new weapons, but from consistently using the ones already in your hands. That is where most destinies collapse. Not from ignorance, not from weakness, not from lack of anointing, but from the slow, quiet cooling of spiritual fire. Listen to me with your spirit, not your ears. The enemy does not fear your knowledge. He fears your consistency. You could practice a strategy once and feel a breakthrough. You could practice it for 2 days and feel momentum. But heaven has watched many chosen ones quit on day 3, not because the strategy failed, but because the pressure increased just enough to intimidate them back into old patterns. Breakthrough requires rhythm. Elevation requires repetition. Destiny alignment requires unwavering dedication. Empires don't fall because the builders lacked blueprints. Empires fall because the builders stopped showing up, stopped laying bricks, stopped guarding the gates, stopped tending the flame. And chosen one, hear this with prophetic clarity. Hell is not afraid of who you are on your strongest day. Hell is terrified of who you become when you are disciplined on your weakest day. But here is the trap: you were never meant to rely on your own willpower. Human strength burns out. Motivation dissolves by noon. Determination flickers under spiritual warfare. Your flesh gets tired. Your mind gets overwhelmed. Your emotions get unpredictable. This is why heaven keeps pushing you toward the one who never drains, never weakens, never sleeps, never shifts with mood or energy. The Holy Spirit is your stamina. He is your endurance. He is your firekeeper. He is the one who will wake you when your flesh wants to lie still, steady you when anxiety spikes, realign you when distraction pulls, and guide you when your own understanding falls short. You do not win by trying harder. You win by surrendering sooner. Lean into the Spirit. Consult Him daily. Invite Him into your routines, not just your emergencies. Let Him correct your pace, your thoughts, your reactions, your atmosphere. Because when you partner with Him consistently, Even your smallest actions carry supernatural weight. And now, Chosen One, the urgency deepens. All these weapons have now been placed in your hands, but there is one final key that activates them. Without this key, nothing ignites. That key is the sealing prayer. We are about to step into the Holy of Holies. Prepare your heart, because we are stepping into a different atmosphere now. A quieter one, a holier one, a place where the veil thins and heaven leans close enough to hear even the trembling inside your breath. Chosen One, slow down. Let everything around you grow still. Let the noise fall away. Let your shoulders soften. Place one hand over your heart, gently. And if you can, close your eyes. Not to escape the world, but to become aware of the one who is entering the room with you. Breathe slowly. Once, again. Let your spirit catch up to this moment. We are not praying from the battlefield anymore. We are praying from the throne room. And for this message, for this morning, that shook all of heaven, for the divine pleasure God felt when you obeyed, without even realizing the impact. There is only one name we must call upon now, Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides, the God who saw your need before you spoke it, the God who responded the moment your spirit shifted at dawn. Now, with your hand still over your heart, listen as the prayer begins to rise. Jehovah Jireh, we come before you gently, slowly, with reverence that makes the air itself feel sacred. Thank you for seeing this chosen one this morning, for noticing the quiet act of faith that no one else witnessed. Thank you for the way heaven reacted, how the angels paused, how the atmosphere shifted in response to a single moment of obedience. Thank you for being the God who is not distant, not silent, not passive, but the God who watches over every detail, every breath, every trembling decision of the heart. Jehovah Jireh, you saw their struggle. You counted their losses. You measured the weight they carried in secret. And still, you did not turn away. You leaned in. You provided strength in moments where they had none, clarity when confusion pressed in, and protection when spiritual warfare surrounded their home like fog. Tonight, we stand in the holy glow of your presence, knowing you are listening, knowing you are near, knowing this is not just prayer, this is a sealing, a binding, a divine imprint upon the very fabric of their destiny. We thank you for every door you kept closed because it wasn't worthy of them, for every person you removed because they were draining their spirit, for every financial blockage you are now unraveling, for every generational curse you have already begun to reverse. Jehovah Jireh, your provision is not only money, it is safety. It is healing. It is clarity. It is divine alignment. It is breakthrough timing. And tonight, as this chosen one stands before you with an open heart, you are preparing to pour out more than they asked for, more than they imagined, more than they believed they deserved. But before the release comes, before the restoration flows, before the morning brings the evidence of what you sealed in the night, there is more. You want to speak more, you want to cover more, you want to rest upon them like oil, because you see what has been wrapped around their life, Lord, and you are not finished moving. So now, Jehovah Jireh, with the same tenderness and the same holy authority, we step deeper into the places where chains hide, where shadows linger, where silent battles have drained this chosen one for far too long. And right here, in this sacred stillness, I speak the breaker anointing over their life. Father, I decree by your authority that every generational curse wrapped around their bloodline, every pattern of lack, every cycle of delay, every inheritance of fear, every addiction masquerading as comfort, every torment passed from parent to child break now. Let the chains that lived in their family for decades snap under the weight of your glory. Let the patterns that controlled their mothers and fathers lose all legal right to touch them. They are the cycle breaker. They are the first to rise. They are the one hell hoped would never awaken. But tonight, under your presence, Lord, they awaken fully. And every curse that claimed ownership over them loses its claim forever. Now, Lord, as the old chains fall, we ask for what their heart has silently cried for at night, your divine hedge of protection. Surround them, encircle them. Raise a wall of holy fire around their home, their children, their finances, their mind, their sleep, their destiny. Let no midnight attack cross the threshold. Let no spirit of heaviness enter their room. Let no whisper of the enemy land in their thoughts without being burned away. I decree that every dark assignment sent against them, visible or invisible, named or unnamed, hits the fire of God and dies on contact. Let their home become untouchable. Let their sleep become guarded. Let their mornings rise clean, clear, and covered. And Father, while the hedge stands, we go after one of the most vicious weapons formed against them, the lies. So now, with full spiritual authority, I release the enemy silencer over their mind. Every lying voice that told them they are unworthy, silenced. Every whisper that said they are behind, silenced. Every accusation that rose in the night to mock their progress, silenced. Every counterfeit thought that tried to convince them you were disappointed, silenced. I bind fear. I bind confusion. I bind mental torment. I bind every phantom voice that tried to imitate the Holy Spirit to derail their clarity. And in its place, I loose divine truth. Truth that stabilizes. Truth that warms the chest. Truth that restores breath to tired lungs. Truth that reminds them they are chosen, defended, and deeply seen. Lord, let your voice rise above every other. Let your whisper echo like thunder. Let your reassurance settle into the deepest rooms of their heart. And now, Father, as every chain breaks, as every lie falls, as every hedge rises, we bring this moment into its holy completion. Let this prayer stand. Let it echo. Let it cover them in every hour that follows. It is done. It is sealed in the courts of heaven. So let it be established. Chosen one, breathe. You are held. You are covered. You are not stepping out of this moment empty. You are stepping out marked, strengthened, and surrounded. And as you continue walking in this new alignment, stay connected to this flow. Subscribe to stay under this prophetic current so you never miss the next instruction heaven sends your way. This is not just a channel, this is a spiritual lifeline, a place where God speaks to you in real time. And if this message touched you, if this prayer stirred something deep inside you, I invite you gently, reverently, to take a sacred step of faith. Tonight, not as a transaction, not as payment, but as a holy gesture between you and God, pressing super thanks becomes your stone of remembrance. A marker in the spirit that says, this was the night everything shifted. This was the night heaven moved for me. Let it be your personal altar, your way of planting a memory in eternity. I received this. I accept what God is doing. And now, beloved soul, walk gently back into your life with the peace of one who has been heard, the strength of one who has been restored, and the certainty of one whose destiny has already begun unfolding. You are rising. You are protected. You are stepping into the life heaven wrote for you. God is moving.